and have been continuously committed to your calling for Laudato Si. Before we begin in our presentation, I'd like to talk about what our program looks like today. We would like to begin with an introduction to our module, an opening prayer, talk a little bit of what faith into action is, and we're going to be enlightened with a wonderful presentation, Action in the Light of Our Faith. We will also do 15 minutes of questions and answers with our panelists, and we'll do 10 minutes of dialogues within small groups and breakout sessions, a wrap-up and a closing prayer. We also have French translation, so if you are looking to have that made available, below on your screen, you will be able to click on interpretation so you can receive that translation. So feel free to go ahead and do that now. If you don't need any translation, there's no need to do any adjustments to your screen. We begin this webinar with prayer, and I'm asking you all to please center ourselves and ask God to enlighten us and continue to inspire us to work towards the care of our common home. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. All-powerful God, you are present in the whole universe and in the smallest of your creatures. You embrace with your tenderness all that exists. Pour out upon us the power of your love, that we may protect life and beauty. Fill us with peace, that we may live as brothers and sisters, harming no one. O God of the poor, help us to rescue the abandoned and the forgotten of this earth, so precious in your eyes. Bring healing to our lives, that we may protect the world and not prey on it, that we may sow beauty, not pollution and destruction. Touch the hearts of those who look only for gain at the expense of the poor and the earth. Teach us to discover the worth of each thing, to be filled with awe and contemplation, to recognize that we are profoundly united with every creature. As we journey towards your infinite light, we thank you for being with us each day. Encourage us, we pray, in our struggle for justice, love, and peace. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Introduction to Module 4. You will be practicing the skill of putting together an event or an activity in your community by talking with others about Laudato Si and having a chance to reflect on that learning. You will dedicate yourself to ongoing personal ecological conversion so that your hearts and eyes are open to the cry of the earth and the poor. We will continue ongoing involvement with GCCM, whether it be by building a chapter, a circle, involvement in Laudato Si generation, or otherwise continuing support in our common mission. And so it is with great delight that I present the people who are behind making this webinar and this program possible. My colleagues, we have Cheryl, which is the Asia Pacific and English speaking animator program manager. Brother Ben, he's the program manager for Africa, and he's based in Nairobi, Kenya. Prince is the program coordinator in Africa, also based in Nairobi, and myself, based in California, program manager for North America. We're also very honored to have a team of facilitators, volunteers that are helping us, that interact with you all on the Thinkific platform and have also been a great assistance in our webinars. Jose from Portugal, Carolyn from Germany, and brother Steve from Kenya. And it is with great pleasure and an honor that I present our guest speaker today, Tomas is the co-founder and executive director of the Global Catholic Climate Movement, working to help the Catholic Church turn Laudato Si's call into bold action for climate justice. Tomas was previously a Fulbright scholar at the Harvard Kennedy School. He served in the UN Climate Secretariat doing political outreach and comms for COP21. He worked as a marketeer with Google for Latin America and Southeast Asia, and co-founded a faith-based nonprofit doing social justice work in the slums of Buenos Aires. He completed a master's degree in public administration with a concentration in climate policy at the Harvard Kennedy School and a master's degree in public policy at Universidad Torquato di Dela. I am very pleased and honored to present Tomas. Welcome, Tomas, and thank you all.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you, Angelica. Such a delight, such a joy to be with you all today. Warm greetings from Rome. I'm based in Rome. It's extremely warm and hot here. And yeah, it was lovely to see all the messages coming in, all the greetings from different continents. So many of you gathered here today. Really, what a joy. And special thoughts and prayers for those comments that were made by some of you from smoky California with the fire season starting there in California. And there was also a comment about the mangroves in the Philippines. So be assured that we're with you hearing the cry of the earth and doing something about it. So that's exactly what we'll be doing today, actually. So what's our response to that cry? That cry that we heard about in the first module. So I'll be sharing from my screen now. Let me pull up my PowerPoint. So yeah, as Angelica mentioned, today will be about action. So important to remember that Pope Francis, I would say ultimately, Laudato Si, this is actually my favorite module, obviously, of the Laudato Si Animatus program, and just my favorite chapters about Laudato Si, which are about action. The Pope, our dear beloved Pope Francis, doesn't want this beautiful encyclical just to sit on a shelf, be a wonderful reflection about the state of our common home. As the subtitle indicates, it's about caring for a common home. It's about action. So that's what we'll be discussing today. How do we respond? How do we put, as an outcome of the previous webinars, we've been learning and seeing what's happening to our common home, judging, understanding the roots of this crisis. Now it's about what do we do about it. So, and as a reminder, the mission of Laudato Si Animators, I think this was said by Christina in the opening webinar, the first webinar, that we're all about living Laudato Si. We want to bring this message to life. So we'll be unpacking a little bit, what does it mean to bring Laudato Si to life? And hopefully this can inspire ideas of what your final project could be as well, to conclude the program in the upcoming season of creation. So briefly, at a high level, if we have to summarize, we live Laudato Si at two levels, at a personal level in our own lives, and at a community level. That's why we're animators. We're Laudato Si animators, not just Laudato Si enthusiasts. We're about engaging others. So I'll unpack briefly these two levels. At a personal level, in terms of us living Laudato Si in our own lives and leading by example, as we say, a nice way of thinking about this is we have at GCCM what we call this slow and fast paradox, the tortoise and the hare. So, which are key concepts that are there in Laudato Si. So, on one side, Laudato Si is inviting us to slow down. As you might recall from the last webinar with Amy last week on the ecological conversion, this ecological conversion at its core arguably what one could say is about slowing down. As the Pope says in Laudato Si, can I ask, Angelica, maybe could you help me out reading these quotes?
Sure. We need to slow down and look at reality in a different way. The continued acceleration of changes affecting humanity and the planet is coupled today with a more intensified pace of life, and work which might be called rapidification. Although change is part of the working of complex systems, the speed in which human activity has developed contrasts with the naturally slow pace of biological evolution.
So we need to, thank you, Angelica, we need to slow down. That's the invitation from the Pope. The Pope also adds this beautiful quote. Could we read this one as well?
Yes. If someone has not learned to stop and admire something beautiful, we should not be surprised if he or she treats everything as an object to be used and abused without scruple.
So I will not dive too much into this. Amy, in the webinar last week already spoke quite a lot about ecological conversion, and which is another way of saying we need to slow down, look at things differently. As the Pope says here, learning to stop and admire something beautiful, this frenetic pace of life that now this year was a strange year that the pandemic suddenly put a brake on humanity and we had to slow down forcefully, but what we know is that very likely as soon as the pandemic is over, very likely we will default into that previous mindset and just mode paradigm of just going too fast. Humanity and the modern lifestyle is just too noisy, too fast, etc., which is one of the reasons, or one of the main reasons, why the ecological crisis is taking place in the first place. But at the same time, paradoxically, we not only need to slow down, we also need to go fast. Could we read this quote, Angelica?
Doomsday predictions can no longer be met with irony or disdain. The effects of present imbalance can only be reduced by our decisive action here and now.
So Laudato Si is a very clear call for urgent action. And indeed, interestingly, Laudato Si mentions the word urgent or urgency 17 times. It's the most urgent encyclical ever issued in terms of we really need to act fast. We have an urgent crisis in front of us. It requires our decisive action here and now. The Pope then added, this is a subsequent speech. Could we read this one, Angelica?
Faced with the climate emergency, we must take action accordingly in order to avoid perpetrating a brutal act of injustice towards the poor and future generations. So
the Pope is very clear. We have a climate emergency. It's not even a crisis, it's even more. And as youth activists, as Greta Thunberg and many others have popularized this concept of our house is on fire, we're in an emergency. I mean, just look at the fires starting right now in California and the fires that have been going on in the Arctic. I mean, madness. The Arctic is on fire. At Greenland, all the recent news about Greenland melting down at unprecedented pace, etc., etc., etc. Our house is really on fire. With or without pandemic, our house is on fire, and will just get worse. So in an emergency situation, we need to act quickly. We need to do something about it. We don't reflect and look at the fire devouring your house. You immediately take action and do something about it to put it off. So in a nutshell then, this paradox then, we just embrace this paradox that as Laudato Si animators, we need to slow down, and at the same time, we need to go fast simultaneously. In other words, we Laudato Si animators, we're contemplatives. We're about reconnecting with creation, having this ecological conversion. And at the same time, we're activists who are taking action very fast, very quickly to put out this fire. So that's the paradox, which another way of visualizing the paradox, if you want, is the act of breathing. This ecological spirituality, this contemplative approach is like the act of inhaling, the act in which we take in, we're nurtured by creation and our creator, we're reconnecting and being nourished. And on the other hand, exhaling is our activism, is we're giving out, what we receive from creation, we give back to creation as well, aiming to heal creation, to halt this abuse of creation. So that's the paradox in a nutshell, which we hope can be helpful for you to think about how you approach the ecological crisis. And I should mention, this is a pretty distinct approach. You don't, if you ask the average environmental activist, you don't usually hear a lot of the latter, not that much about the eco-spirituality and the eco-conversion piece of it. So we embrace both. We see them as equally important. That's a distinctive, let's say, touch of our Catholic approach. And now diving a little bit deeper, if you want, we also like to unpack it and break it down, if you want, there's 2 levels into 3 levels. And this is now introducing the type of action that we undergo. When we talk about Laudato Si action, what kind of action do we need to take? We can break it down into this 3 levels, if you want, that we see them as concentric circles, that the act of taking action with Laudato Si is first having this ecological conversion that was already covered last week, at the spiritual level, let's say, this internal transformation that is needed. Moving a little bit out, we need to not only transform our hearts and our spiritual connection with creation and the creator, but also it's about changing our lifestyles. We need to change our harmful lifestyles. We need to shrink our footprint and live more simply. And last but not least, it's not about us changing ourselves. Now moving in the spectrum, the external transformation is also needed. It's not enough if we Christians, we in the church, we transform ourselves. We need the larger systems out there, the government policies and corporate operations and so on to change as well. So we know that there's that bigger dimension as well. All of this is in chapter 6 of Laudato Si. It's not packaged in this way, but it's there. There's some clear sections there, the respective paragraphs. This will be shared afterwards, I'm assuming. But it's there in chapter 6 of Laudato Si. And chapter 5 dives quite a lot deeper as well into that third part about the political debates and changes that are needed. So very briefly then, and this is the invitation for what kind of action needs to happen in your own lives and in your community. So I'll say a quick word about that in a minute. This first level then, we already spoke, this ecological conversion, this ecological spirituality that the Pope is proposing. Second, in terms of living more simply, Pope Francis has this very clear, explicit invitation to change our lifestyles. We need to change our lifestyles. We need to change from our harmful, polluting lifestyles that most of us have, or many of us have, to more simple and sustainable lifestyles. And third, last but not least, I'd like to also add this quote. If you could add this quote, if you could read it, Angelica, it's a powerful quote.
Yes, I just can't read the last line. Our common home is being pillaged. Oh, here we go. Laid waste and harmed with impunity. Cowardice is defending it is a grave sin. People and their movements are called to cry out, mobilize, and to demand peacefully but firmly that appropriate and urgent needed measures be taken. I ask you in the name of God to defend
Mother Earth. Yeah, that's the last line, so you cannot read it. To defend Mother Earth. I ask you in the name of God to defend Mother Earth. Cowardice in defending it is a grave sin. So it's strong language that Pope Francis is using. This was a speech that he did in Bolivia just a few weeks after releasing Laudato Si in 2015. A very strong appeal. We need to go out and exact pressure on governments and corporations who are destroying our common home. So very clear call from the Pope. Here I'd like to introduce, this will be part of the homework, the Laudato Si pledge. We have here a nice picture of Pope Francis inviting us, asking us, have you signed the Laudato Si pledge? That's what that sign reads in Spanish. The Laudato Si pledge is a pretty simple, beautiful pledge. It's a commitment to live Laudato Si in these three areas that we just spoke about. The invitation is to fill it out as part of the homework. So hopefully you could do that later and maybe take one concrete commitment in each of these three areas of, yeah, what are you hoping to do in your personal life to start living out this message? But more of that will be shared online. And now very quickly on the community level, here's, as I mentioned at the beginning, it's not enough for us to live this message in our personal lives. We also need, most importantly, to live it with others. We animate others, as our title indicates, as Laudato Si animators, to live Laudato Si. As we read in the gospel, your light must shine before others. We cannot keep this Laudato Si treasure to ourselves. We desperately need to share it for a couple of reasons. First, because personal action is not enough. If we change ourselves and our lifestyles, that's not enough. Could you read this quote, Angelica, for us?
Self-improvement on the part of individuals will not by itself remedy the extremely complex situation facing our world today. Social problems must be addressed by community networks and not simply by the sum of individual good deeds.
Key quote, self-improvement at an individual level is not enough. Then it's not only that, it's also that we cannot do this alone. We need a community. Could we read this quote?
The ecological conversion needed to bring about lasting change is also a community conversion.
It's really essential. I mean, we cannot do this alone. It's hard. This ecological conversion, this really drastic transformation of our lives and everything, as the Pope is calling in Laudato Si, as is required by the scale and magnitude of the ecological crisis, requires, I mean, it's hard. It's a lifelong journey, by the way. By signing up as a Laudato Si animator, it's a lifelong journey, really. This will very likely have the ecological crisis around for the next couple of decades. So it's a long journey. We need others. It will make our journey way lighter, way more enjoyable, way easier and more effective and impactful eventually. And last but not least, it's also because we simply need everybody. We need to proclaim this message. As the Pope says, could we read this one, Angelica?
Everyone's talents and involvement are needed to redress the damage caused by human abuse of God's creation.
Everyone is needed. Everyone's talents and involvement are needed. So we have over 300 people now in this live webinar, and I understand that there will be quite a few more in the afternoon session or evening session today, and there are many other animators taking this course right now in the different languages. We're several thousands of Laudato Si animators across the globe, but it's still not enough. There's 7+ billion people in this planet, and there's 1.2 billion Catholics out there. We need everybody to turn around this and tackle this ecological crisis that we're facing. So that's why we're all about animating others, and that's the invitation for you. I mean, as we conclude the course, we get close to the conclusion. As you know, there's a final project. This course is not just about learning about Laudato Si, which we hope this was a helpful introduction, but certainly not enough. It's a treasure. We still need to I've read and reread Laudato Si multiple times. There's so much there. It's a beautiful document that takes a lot to unpack, but most importantly, we need to put it into action. So that's the invitation. We invite you, we encourage you to put together a final project to animate your community, thinking of this as a first step for engaging your community. And of course, this is also keeping in mind relevant restrictions and limitations of the pandemic situation, right? There could be online versions of this as well. As I will not read this long list of options, but bottom line, the invitation is for your final project to engage your community to be in one of those three areas we spoke about: this spiritual ecological conversion, this footprint reduction, or this sustainability area of work, or this advocacy or raising a prophetic voice area of work. So I'll just share very quickly a couple of examples from Laudato Si animators from last year that we hope can, provide some ideas of what could you do. The nuance is that these projects were done without a pandemic, and so depending on your country, you know that countries are getting back to normal. Some others are in the midst of chaos and lockdowns. It depends a lot, but this is just to share some ideas. And eventually some of them could be either online or with social distancing. There are all ways of doing them eventually. So some examples then in the first area of work, this ecological conversion, the spiritual level, let's say. Some examples. So here we have an example from Italy. Valentino in Lopiano created a Laudato Si circle, which is a local GCCN group. So he started with a group hike in nature, which again this is pretty good for social distancing outside, with spiritual reflections about Laudato Si. And that was kind of his excuse for then starting an ongoing Laudato Si circle. They continue to gather on an ongoing basis. We'll say more about that in a minute. Another example here from Canada, Karen organized a season of creation mass and a hike. So with a season of, I forgot to mention this, of course, that the invitation is for this final project to happen during the season of creation, which I believe was already introduced, right? So which happens next September. So this is an example of a nice, mass done outdoors. This is another great option. Here, there's another example now from Slovenia. Alenka, a Laudato Si animator there, prepared a Taizé prayer service for creation and had a lecture and conversation about Laudato Si in her parish. Another example now from the US, Paul and Susanna, a married couple, they integrated Season of Creation in the Sunday masses of their parish. So homily, just working on the homily with the parish priest and including things in the newsletter, etc., etc. A few events and handouts. The second area of work and where your final project could take place is about this sustainability or simple living area of work. Some examples from India. Elvira joined the environmental cell in her parish in Mumbai, and they organized this beach cleanup with the parish. Good option. Another option now from Grenada, Roxanne held this eco-bricking workshop in a Catholic high school. So this is another, very tangible and interactive and compelling way of engaging a community in something very concrete in terms of plastics. In this case, it's about plastics with the eco-bricks. Tree planting activity in Poland. Christoph organized this with young people from a school in his community. And last but not least, in Ecuador, Krista started a parish garden. But not only that, which is a great idea, usually parishes have green spaces where a garden could be started. Some people call it Laudato Si gardens. And also, organized a plant swap event, swapping plants between parishioners and a children's club, etc. So, and last but not least, there's an eco-parish guide, could be a useful resource for starting to engage your parish or your school or community with implementing renewable energy, solar energy, or any other kind of energy efficiency improvements. And last but not least, sorry I'm going so quickly, but I'm mindful of time, and we wanted to share a couple of examples. Last but not least, in terms of advocacy, we have the climate strikes coming up. These are examples from last year, but there will be another. You might remember the youth movement and Greta and this massive mobilizations, the climate strikes. There will be another one next month on September 25th. So this is a very powerful way of elevating our voice collectively with the rest of the climate movement, especially with the youth activists who are fighting for their future. It's a very compelling, not only for young people, but people of all ages to engage. So here's some examples from last year. Samuel in Pakistan organized a climate strike with high school students. In Australia, Netta here also engaged her archdiocese in supporting the climate strike. So this is a very concrete opportunity that is very worthwhile. And last but not least, fossil fuel divestment. This is a big campaign. We encourage you to find out more online on our website. This is a campaign, it's a financial boycott to the fossil fuel industry. Lots of Catholic institutions have already done it, and there's another joint announcement next November. So maybe you can start with asking your diocese or asking your religious order or whoever Catholic institution you're familiar with to divest from fossil fuels. Maybe you can start a petition. There are lots of options and lots of resources in our website to support you in that. So I'll stop here. I would like just a quick question before wrapping up, asking, do you already have, based on this, and if you can share in the chat box, do you have any idea of what type of final project you would like to do, just to have a sense of what type of projects you're thinking about? If you can just answer 1, 2, or 3, or 4, responding that correspond to these levels that we just spoke about. So number 1, this ecological conversion, this spirituality angle. Number 2, sustainability and simple living. Number 3, advocacy, or simply 4, you're not sure. So it can take a couple of seconds just to have a sense. Oh, nice, I see some that combine a couple. That's exciting. That's also, of course, very welcome. So I see a lot of variety there. And all are good, all are welcome. We need action in the 3 areas. And hopefully starting with one of these areas is then a segue to, in the future, organize other activities in the other areas. So also it's good to just keep it focused. That's an option. But well, thanks for sharing. That's exciting. A lot of action in all 3 areas. I see all areas being mentioned. So that's extremely exciting. So thanks for sharing. And now, just to close, I'd like to just make a mention to follow the final project. An idea is we want to propose also the Laudato Si circles. The Laudato Si circles, there was one of the examples I mentioned is a Laudato Si circle. There are these local GCCM groups, local groups in a parish, in a school, in whatever type of community. It could be in a home, in your own home, could be anywhere, with friends, whoever is most relevant, just thinking for ongoing, the ongoing journey, that it doesn't finish in September with your event, your project that you'll be putting together. As I mentioned, it's a lifelong journey. This will be a long journey. We need this community, a community of people walking with us together. So Laudato Si circles are growing and growing across the globe. There are lots of circles popping up everywhere. So maybe for the people you recruit for your final project, you will need help for putting together your final project. So identifying who are the key people in your parish or your community that will be helping you put together your final project. They could be the core group also for an ongoing Laudato Si circle. So I'll just close with these 2 pictures. These are from my Laudato Si circle. I have my own Laudato Si circle as well here in Rome. So here, 2 photos from my circle. we do these two things of going slow and going fast, right? And we have our outdoors prayer services and masses. We have a wonderful garden and a convent where we have our spiritual gatherings and prayers, but also we take action. We go fast as well. So this is an example here from a climate strike. We participated in a climate strike here in Rome with many of the Circle members and others. So yeah, we encourage you. It's a very life-giving journey. So thank you again for responding to the Pope's call, and well, looking forward for the journey ahead. Thank you very much, and back to you, Angelica.
Thank you, Tomas, and thank you so much for your wonderful message on making sure that we remember that our life must shine before others, and that this journey of an animator's is a lifetime journey. And so we do need others, and thank you for all those wonderful examples of what we can do for our upcoming project. Right now, I know many of you are dying to ask Tomas a lot of questions, so we are going to take a couple minutes to reflect on everything that he presented, and we will ask him a couple questions. We're very honored to have an animator from Nairobi, Linda, that will be reading the questions. And I also want to thank Raul that's been doing the French translations as well.
I'm sorry if I went too fast for the translator.
Okay, Linda, if you have some questions already, feel free to go ahead and ask Tomas.
Hi, Angelica. Thank you. And thank you, Tomas, for the beautiful presentation. So we have the first question from David Jackson. David Jackson believes that personal and community action must now lead to political action, or there will be no change. Does Laudato Si have ideas about how we can do political action?
Yes, actually. So I encourage you to read the paragraphs I shared in my presentation. So both chapter 5 as a whole is all about the political conversation, both at an international level. That's the other thing, right? That this crisis needs to be tackled at all levels. We need to take political action at an international level. So as an example, we have the Paris Climate Agreement, which is our main framework for global coordinated action on the climate crisis. And there are other UN, let's say, treaties that are related, the biodiversity treaties. There are several things going on at the international level where international cooperation is absolutely essential. As the Pope says, we need, as one world, we need one common plan to tackle this crisis. But in practice, that global plan, which is the Paris Agreement, which has this ambitious goal of limiting temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is a pretty ambitious goal that the Paris Agreement has, that we're very far from reaching. That plan is accomplished through action at the national level and subsequently at a local level. So one key quote that I think is important to keep in mind, so in terms of what Laudato Si has to say, I would say my favorite quote to answer that question is from Laudato Si, I think it's 179. The Pope says something like, while the existing world order proves powerless to assume its responsibilities, and think here about the Paris Agreement being off track and the US pulling out from the Paris Agreement and many other governments starting to follow the US and so on. The Pope says, while that world order seems powerless to deal with this issue, the Pope then says, it's local groups, local individuals and groups that can make a real difference. That's why I'm so excited about our movement and Laudato Si animators, all of you, is because at the local level is where the real difference, as the Pope says, the real difference happens at the local level. We need to aggregate an amazing amount of work happening at the local level to make the difference at the big international level. So that's the first insight from Laudato Si, that local is what makes the difference. We have this, there's this, let's say, motto in the environmental movement, global, think global, act local. And we in our movement, we're a global movement, we're globally connected, as in this webinar, we've had people from all continents dialing in, and we're united in the spirit of global solidarity, but we're taking action in our respective communities, in our respective countries and cities. So, and the local level here is, it's way thinking, not even national, thinking in, for example, if in your particular country, both inside the church and at the government level, it's, let's say, harder to influence the national decision makers, to move the whole bishops' conference to get more active with Laudato Si, which is a key goal we have. We want to support and we want to gently move and push the church to take more action. And we also want to push governments together with the rest of the environmental movement. We want to work with others. We know that we have to work with others. At a national level, it's pretty hard. There's so many forces, but at the local level, it's way easier. It's way easier to contact a local mayor or a local bishop than it is to contact a president or a national legislator or the president of the National Bishops' Conference. So this insight from the Pope about the local is absolutely brilliant. So it's way easier to organize in your community and work with other environmental groups and other faiths, if relevant, to send a letter to the mayor and ask the municipality to start taking action and so on, than at a larger level. So that's a first insight I would mention. The other insights, another insight that I love from Laudato Si as well, the Pope speaks about about boycotts. He mentioned boycotts as a powerful tool. He speaks about how the political system is co-opted by corporations and so on. We know that political systems in most countries are pretty corrupt with different degrees of corruption, and corporations have a strong hold and influence over those politicians. So boycotts have proven to be extremely successful. The Pope speaks about boycotts And one very powerful boycott is the one I mentioned, the fossil fuel divestment campaign. Very powerful campaign that was started by other environmental groups and has proven to have a huge impact, given the fossil fuel industry is so powerful, undermining their financial foundations, let's say, is what shakes them and makes them tremble and hopefully will make them change. So those are some quick insights. I know there's a lot more to say. Thank you for that great question. I want just to mention other questions as well.
Thank you. So Felicia Mantola would like to know, how do you divest of fossil fuels when you're not in a more country?
Sorry, what was the question again? How to divest from fossil fuels?
How do you divest of fossil fuels when you are not in a modern country?
That's a very good question. And actually, this I should have clarified that the fossil fuel divestment campaign is most relevant for countries, for the wealthiest countries, if you want, where there are more financial resources, because the fossil fuel divestment campaign is about targeting the financial market. So, you know, the financial investments that support the fossil fuel industry. So arguably, I'm from Argentina. Argentina, we don't have a big financial market, and there's not a lot of financial investments from Argentina supporting the expansion of the fossil fuel industry. But still, there's first that there's financial resources everywhere, or most places. So there are varying degrees of relevance of this campaign. But I would mention it's most relevant for the wealthiest countries. So for example, now that I moved to Europe, of course, here in Italy, there's way more financial resources. So it's more relevant here. In other countries, like in Argentina, tackling the fossil fuel industry is slightly different. So in our example in Argentina, the government subsidizes the fossil fuel industry. So this is where an invitation is to learn a little bit more. The climate crisis is complex, and there's a lot of education that we need to undergo. In order to be effective in our activism, we need to understand how this works. How are the political dynamics? What's the role of the fossil fuel industry? What's the Paris Agreement about? How does it work? So in our case in Argentina, the government first receives a lot of the big fossil fuel companies come from the US or Europe with their own investments, but the Argentinian government subsidizes and supports those companies to operate in Argentina. So if the government didn't subsidize those companies, it would not be viable for those companies to do those things. So it depends a lot country by country. On the mechanics of how divestment works, we invite you, there's no time in this webinar, but to visit our website, and there are more resources there about how divestment can, there's a fossil fuel divestment toolkit that has a lot of explanations about how to actually do it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. So there's also another question here by Julia, who would like to know, will priests and bishops and also seminarians be trained in as Laudato Si? And is there a role we can play as volunteers to help make that happen? And also, how do you get cooperation from your parish if the parish priest just does not want to do anything on climate change?
So those are great questions. I'll start with the last one. On the last one, how to get cooperation if your parish priest is not helping or open. I think that in most cases, when that happens, it's about a low awareness about Laudato Si. Probably the parish priest doesn't know about Laudato Si. That's the sad thing, that there really are many priests, and I would argue also bishops, who have not read Laudato Si. There are many reasons for that. Many of them are extremely busy. They have so many other priorities. this is where we need to nudge them. We need to gently push them and help them to understand how big of a priority this is. The Pope has issued one single encyclical in his 7 years as Pope. There was one in 2013, but it was drafted by Benedict. So Pope Francis, in 7 years, only drafted one encyclical, and it's Laudato Si. It's a top priority for Pope Francis. So having just an honest conversation with the parish priest, expressing first how this is a top priority for the church and the Pope. Second, a nice hook that usually works. All priests are interested in having a vital church community and having young people engaged in their parish. It's pretty well-known fact that environmental issues are especially interesting for young people. So you can tell a parish priest, if you're interested in having more young people participate in the parish and bring some new energy to the parish, Laudato Si can be a key resource to help the parish in that regard. For the new evangelization, we need to address this critical concern of young people. So that's another way of having a nice hook. And the other thing is simply to start a Laudato Si circle, show how people are interested in. When the parish priest sees that, oh, indeed, people are interested and lay people have a strong interest in this issue, probably the door will be more open. So I would just be patient and insist, gently insist, and eventually I'm sure the parish priest will understand. On the other question that was asked in terms of formation of parish priests, I would argue that the overwhelming majority of seminaries unfortunately don't have Laudato Si included in the curricula yet, despite there was a document some 1 or 2 years ago that the Vatican published on priest formation and so on, and it had a recommendation for seminaries to start including Laudato Si, but it takes time. We know that the church is very slow, but this is where this is the crisis that doesn't allow for slow responses. As we spoke about the slow and fast, we need to move fast. So here it's lay people. It's in this age of the church, we know that the role of lay people is becoming increasingly important. So and that's recognized even more each time, more and more. So it's us young people, and I know that we have not only lay people in this call, we have animators, sisters, and even priests and friars. But I see a majority of lay people just reaching out, knocking the door, and educating. We need to help. We're at the service of the church. We need to help the church engage with this issue. So sometimes it requires patience, but persistence to accompany it.
I think we have time for one more question, Linda.
Yes, of course. The last question, this question is from Clayton. The encyclical is written to all of goodwill. How about ecumenical initiatives so that churches in a neighborhood can get together and live Laudato Si?
Great question.
How about
Sorry?
Yes, please. Yes, please continue.
So that's a great question. Indeed, Laudato Si was addressed to all people of goodwill. There were 2 encyclicals that were issued to all people of goodwill. The other one was in the 60s about the nuclear issue. So yes, I referenced this briefly. We need to work with others. It's not about us working in the Catholic bubble, which is a nice bubble, and we need to work in that Catholic bubble, but we need to get out as well of the bubble and engage others. As the Pope likes to say, a church that goes out, that goes forth. So indeed, there's, and in terms of how to do it, I would say on one side, yes, we need to work with other faiths and other Christian churches in the first place. Regarding this question that was about ecumenical collaboration, the season of creation is a spectacular opportunity to do ecumenical work. Actually, care for creation is one of those few issues that brings all Christians together, where we're all in agreement, or almost all Christian churches in agreement, that we need to care for creation. We need to, this is a very uniting thing. And the church has a commitment to ecumenical dialogue. We need to come together with other Christian churches. So the season of creation, I should mention, in its DNA, it's an ecumenical initiative. The season of creation was born out very briefly. I'm not sure if there was, Angelica, was the season of creation introduced, or this is the first time?
I believe we have already introduced it, yes.
Okay, great. So this special time in September, it started from the Orthodox Church. The Orthodox Church started the September 1st day of prayer for creation, and then ecumenical networks and eventually led to embracing this whole month of September, concluding on October 4th. So it's an ecumenical initiative. It started in other Christian churches, and we Catholics are joining, wholeheartedly joining this ecumenical celebration. So to answer that question, then I would propose maybe it could be for your final project, a season of creation prayer service that is ecumenical, with engaging your parish, maybe your diocese, with other Christian churches, bringing together leaders from different Christian churches in your town, in your city, to pray together. That's a powerful message of unity, and that we urgently need at this time. So it's a very powerful message as well. So it could even be a combination of a spirituality, thinking of the combinations of 1, 2, and 3. Maybe it's 1 and 3, bringing together Christian leaders and issuing an appeal to the local mayor. There are multiple ways that maybe you could combine 1 and 3. So yeah, an ecumenical angle is definitely greatly welcome. Great question, thank you.
Thank you. And there's many, many more questions. So I invite you all to continue asking those questions on the Thinkific platform. Now we want to open up this time and space for you to dialogue amongst yourselves as animators. So we will be breaking out into groups, and all you have to do is you will see a little prompt come up on your screen that says join breakout session, and go ahead and click join. For our French speakers, you do not need to do anything. You just stay here in the main page, on the main session page. And so we'll give about maybe 10 minutes to dialogue. And again, here will be your questions, and ask and share. There's many, many resources that have been given to you today by Tomas. This is an opportunity for you to dialogue with other animators and share some of your ideas. And so, Prince, if you could please break us out into groups. This will take a few seconds, so I just appreciate your patience in advance. But these are going to be your 2 questions that you will ask yourself in groups. What is your vision of how you will bring Laudato Si to life in your own community? And the second is, do you already have 2 or 3 people in mind who could help you with this and join? And that's really probably the most important part of what Tomas has also been talking about, that it's not about you just doing it alone. It's about bringing your community in and helping bring more resources and actions into your community. So once again, you will be given a little prompt on your screen. Please go ahead and select join breakout rooms and talk amongst yourself. We'll give you about 10 minutes, and then we'll all come back to the main session and do a wrap up for this webinar.
Thank you, Angelica. Just to add, our French speakers kindly remain on this main room. Do not join the breakout sessions. Thank you.
All for being part of the dialogue session. This portion of our webinar, we are going to just be reporting back via chat. If you could please type in any insights that came through as an inspiration from your dialogue in your small group. We'll just take a couple of minutes to do that, and we will all wrap up to the next part of our session. So thank you. Just take a few minutes here and type in the chat box. So in wrapping things up, we are just going to remind you all for doing fantastic work on the Thinkific platform. But if you have not, please take time to do your homework, your assignments. I know Tomas mentioned about our homework on the eco-conversion template and reflecting on the Laudato Si pledge. Please take time to do that, complete assignments, and read all materials. Again, that's all necessary in able to complete your program and receive your certificate in the graduation. You will also be receiving an email in this upcoming days asking you to register for the next week's session, which that session will talk a lot about the capstone project. Again, Tomas did mention the capstone project, which is the final project as animators you put together, and that's some of the ideas that you shared right now in the dialogue session. And so we're going to be sending an email with links so you can join those sessions per your particular region. So if you're North America, there'll be a session for you. If you're in the African continent, there'll be one for you, in Europe, and so on. So please make sure that in the email you click on the right Zoom link and register for that webinar. Graduation will be October 14th. And I just really want to thank our staff and our volunteers that were able to help us not only on the chat, but on the tech side and answering and asking questions. And Raul that was doing translation. And a big warm thank you to you all for joining us. We were just on a call. I was really honored to be on a call and on a group with two people from Bombay Island that were joining us at 1 a.m. And so it's very inspirational to see the commitment that our animators have and your strong commitment to living Laudato Si. And it's really inspirational, not only for myself, but for other animators to see that living Laudato Si is a long time journey and we need each other to do so. And so I'll close us up today in a closing prayer. And hopefully my sound is working here. We just all gather ourselves back into a space of thankfulness and just in gratitude that we are all here together globally in solidarity to live Laudato Si and pray together. So if Prince, you could just let me know if the sound's working. Oops.
Yes, it's okay.
God of love, I thank you for the people in my life who are easy to love. I thank you for my family and friends who understand my actions, who support me in my decisions, and whose presence can lift the burden of a thorny day. Help me with those who are difficult to love. When they come at me with criticism and wild expectations, when they ignore me or try to bend me to their will, let me recognize their flaws and their dangers. But then, let me remember your attitude toward them and lead me to see them in the light of your love. Amen.
Amen. And again, thank you all for joining us. If you have any questions, please reach out to your designated program manager. It's been a joy and a delight to be part of this journey with you all, and that's on behalf of all of our GCCM staff and volunteers. Thank you for all your great work, and I'll leave you with this fantastic video from a group in Africa that also lived Laudato Si through a song. So this gives you an idea. Please share it. I had a group member that said that she's been sharing this video to all the priests in her diocese. So please do so and continue being smiling and living Laudato Si. We will see you next week. Thank you very much. And feel free to add anything in the chat. We'll leave that open for discussion or any type of comments. Thank you again. Take care.
Tremblement de terre. Écoute les pleurs de pauvres, les pleurs de la terre. Au secours! Sorbele pour la gloire du Seigneur.
Vivo llamado de usted.